Do you ever have those moments where you just need to go for a walk in the woods or sit by the beach? That's your nervous system giving you an SOS. We're going to talk more about that when we return.
Hey guys, welcome back. Dr. Longyear here, Dr. Mike and Dr. Meg. Sorry, we just got done on a trip where I went by Dr. Longyear. I don't usually go by Dr. Longyear in the office. I go by Dr. Mike. But when I'm off traveling and teaching, sometimes it's Dr. Longyear. Welcome back to the Woo and Science podcast. We'll be talking today about something that has come up a lot for me lately. And this is, if you guys have watched some of our old podcasts, we talked about frequencies in the past. This is one that we'll call this frequencies part two, because nature and really nervous system activation or nervous system calming, or however you want to look at it from whatever lens, is really about frequencies and how they affect your brain and your nervous system and your body. And nature is all the natural frequencies. If we want to nerd out on numbers and get into things like the Fibonacci spiral and all of that stuff around numbers and frequencies, we can do that. We can also talk about the Schumann resonance, which I know she'll have a lot to say on. The Schumann resonance being the frequency of actually the core of the earth or of the planet, and how it actually calms us. But also the sounds and the colors of nature, and really the multi-sensory experience of being in nature versus being inside of a room, are huge for calming the brain, activating the brain, and really just our overall health and wellness. There's actually some research, I'll jump right into the research articles. There's some research out of Japan from a long time ago, actually, that showed about a 20-point decrease in blood pressure just from spending an hour in nature. And that isn't even an hour a day. That was 1 hour a week, showed a 20-point drop over time. So that tells us it's just calming for our nervous system. It's calming for our bodies, reconnecting to nature, hugging a tree if you're an old hippie,
Or a
hugging
young
a
hippie,
tree
I'm
or
not
a young
old.
hippie. I still have the pictures of you in Costa Rica hugging the tree. There are ways to just get back to nature, and some of it is reconnecting to those frequencies of the earth, specifically that Schumann resonance, that's 7.83 to 86 hertz. And then others is just the multisensory experience of being in green trees and hearing the ocean waves laps, right? So all of those are just huge for our brain and our nervous system.
Well, we did that yesterday, right? As we're restoring from jet lag, and that was an experience. Just sitting by the ocean yesterday morning and just listening and not doing anything, just being still and listening to that repetitive sound as the waves are crashing and coming up on the shore. I know you loved walking around when we lived in Michigan, going out into the trees and just listening to the trees, blowing, and all of these things that, we just don't realize that our nervous system and our bodies and our minds need so much. But the visual aspect, which I've learned a lot from you, of the visual and being able to look at the way the leaves are shaped versus the hardness that we have in our world of buildings and all of these things that our brain doesn't necessarily like, that kind of organization, so to speak. So definitely, when you're feeling like you need to get out in the woods, listen to that and go find your way to get into some trees, go sit in nature, go camping, do something to just kind of honor that, calling that your body is trying to communicate with our world, our environment, right? That the healing. Or for me, go sit on the beach. Great. Okay. Every day, let's do it. Go listen to the waves and just feel stress just wash away. And the sounds and the frequencies that I'm sure you get more into on what frequencies are from all of the more relaxing versus more high pitched, and how that affects our nervous system in a positive versus negative way.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, our world is loud. You don't realize it.
Mhm.
One of my favorite things is when the power goes out. It
It's so
sounds weird,
creepy.
but you feel different, right? You feel the quietness. You hear the quietness when the power goes out. It's a different sound. You realize how loud the world is when you experience something like that. And then especially if you're fortunate enough to get up into the woods and go out in the mountains and things like that, once you get away from all of the sounds that the world just makes, right?
Yep.
All of the computers, all of our cars are run by computers now, right? Your homes are mostly run by computers at this point. We all have a little computer in our pocket, right? You're watching this on a little computer. All of those emit a really high frequency sound. And sometimes you can hear it, and sometimes it's off the electromagnetic spectrum. If we look at what the electromagnetic spectrum is, or the frequencies that we're bombarded by on a daily basis, if it was, from fingertip to fingertip, we only perceive like a hair of that.
Mhm.
And so what we hear and what we see and what we feel is actually not even close to the amount of frequencies that we're bombarded with. So when the power goes out, that's why it sounds different. It's also why it feels different.
Definitely feels.
And you can feel that stillness. Like looking at a picture of a serene, mountainscape, there's a body of water and all that kind of stuff. And if you look at it, you can actually feel the picture. And it's because your body knows what that lack of sensory input is like. And, a lot of what we get from our phones or what we get from the computer, a lot of the we'll call it background noise in our world is very high pitched. It's a very high frequency. So it's a lot for our brain to have to sort out. Think babies crying. Babies crying and the hum of your phone or of your computer are actually pretty close in frequency. Anything above 2000 hertz specifically is seen almost as a danger signal to your brain. When we
Interesting.
get below 2000 hertz, that's when our brain can start to relax and calm down a little bit. And that's when it starts to drive a slower brainwave pattern in us too, as well, like alpha and theta, which is our relaxation and our regeneration brainwaves. Whereas those high frequencies, they drive us more into beta, which is kind of go, go, go. And that's where a lot of like the anxiety feeling comes from, is beta waves, and all of that kind of stuff is more of a beta program. But if you get into the natural sounds, bubbling brook, waves lapping on an ocean is between like 0 and 200. All of those are definitely frequencies that are in that lower, well below 2000 most of the time,
Mhm.
that allow our brain and our body to just kind of calm and relax a little bit.
Yeah, so healing. Well, you talked a little bit about the Schumann resonance too, which I always think is so fascinating. If you're not familiar with what that is, as Dr. Mike was explaining, the frequency of the Earth, 7.83.
Yeah, between 7.83 and 7.9.
Yes, and so it's interesting. A while back, I had heard about an app that actually records it in real time, and
And I'm laughing because she'll explain more in a minute, but she constantly comes up and she's like, look, see, that's why you didn't feel good.
yep, because of Schumann resonance. So the frequency of the earth, right, in that more calming relaxation. That's why you go walk around barefoot in the grass and the dirt, and it really calms. It's naturally calming to our cellular, down to our cellular level. But when the frequency of the earth changes for different reasons and things, there can be perceived spikes in the energy, or there can be drops in the energy. And it was probably the coolest thing. It was about 4 or 5 years ago that I found this. We had so many patients that had been coming in and nobody was sleeping. Every single one of my patients was saying that they weren't sleeping. And I'm like, this is really weird. Why is everybody not sleeping? Like, is there something going on? Something all around this time I had heard about the Schumann resonance. So I looked it up on this app, and sure enough, the nights, normally it has like a little thing where it's, showing the colors, blue and green, where it's keeping in that range of 7.83. And then there were these black spots where there was no color. And those times that was happening was when these patients were telling me that they weren't sleeping well. It's like, oh my gosh, how crazy is that? Could that be coincidence? So then sure enough, we'd start seeing ones that we would have like a spike in the resonance, and it would be, up in the, eight or nines. And, then all of a sudden we'd be having lots of people coming in with panic attacks. Maybe they weren't sleeping well, different symptoms that people are going to have based on, your own health. But it was so fascinating to see as the earth was changing because of whatever solar flares and different things that were affecting the earth's frequency, how that was affecting all of us as we're walking around on the earth and changing, how we're perceiving. But of course, we all go to, what's wrong with me? What did I eat last night? Or I must have, done something to affect it. Here it is, your environment affecting how you're feeling. The same way that we can use things like going out for a walk in nature and doing things like that to help calm us. Here are things going on that we don't even realize are happening and how that's affecting us. And then how we're getting all anxious about, oh, I'm not sleeping, and all of these kinds of things. So there's a great app I'll drop probably I think it's through the app store. I'd have to look at exactly what it's called, but great app. And I swear half my patients now have this app just because anytime that they're feeling a little off, they're like, let me check the Schumann resonance first to see if something's been going on with the earth. And if there was, okay, so this too shall pass and I'll be all right. And can do a lot for your mental health because, that's a big deal.
Well, and it makes sense, right? From a physics perspective, if we want to get weird for a second, we're all electromagnets. So you're pumping blood through your body, through your heart, and it's a negatively charged substance or liquid. And so you're creating this magnetic field around you. We talked a little bit about that, especially going through COVID, because the field that you emit is about 3 feet. If you have a good, strong electromagnetic field, the field that you emit is about 3 feet in diameter, or 3 feet away from you, I should say. And so, we talk a little bit about these pictures that are behind us here. You have your brain, which is the one that's over my head, and then you have your heart brain, or the brain in your heart. And this one is actually what creates that electromagnetic field by pumping the blood in and out and pumping it around. And it creates that electromagnetic aura, if you will, around you. And it interacts with your environment sometimes before your brain perceives it. So that intuition, or that feeling I call it your spider sense, that comes even before your brain understands what's going on, is actually coming from the heart resonance, or coming from that frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's so important for us to be together, right? If you can get into nature, you can recharge. If you can get into nature with someone, it's even better, because you get that electromagnetic energy bouncing off of each other as well. And then we could go even further down a rabbit hole with whether your energy is good or bad energy, and whether you're emitting something that's friendly to somebody or something that's pushing them away. I'm sure you can get into all of the weird stuff with that. But just from the basic standpoint, when you interact with somebody 3 feet and 3 feet, that's when that interaction happens. That's when that exchange of energy happens. So there was no surprise that it was a 6 feet barrier, right? Staying away from somebody. Again, I won't put my tinfoil hat on too much, but there was a reason they had you stay 6 feet away from people. When you're inside that 6 feet, you're interacting on a different energetic level.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's paying attention to that frequency exchange, or that understanding. And the earth is the same. When you get outside and you're closer to a tree, it also emits an electromagnetic frequency, a measurable electromagnetic frequency. And so when you interact with those things, you get fed that energy, and that's why it regenerates you and calms you. I often say regenerates and calms at the same time. Those are thought of as opposite, but when you energize the right parts of the brain, it will have a calming effect and a regenerative process in your body. So experiencing those electromagnetic frequencies, not necessarily the really high frequencies that you get from your phone, but the lower frequency EMFs that come from plants and trees, and yes, even crystals and rocks have electromagnetic frequencies that they emit based on color and based on properties like hardness and all of those things. So it's hugely important for our brain to get into those environments and exchange ions, so to speak, or exchange energy with those things.
I actually read something. I wish I had saved it. Maybe I sent it to you. I'll have to go back and look about trees communicating through energy, and that's how which
Well, that's where the
makes
basis of Avatar
sense.
was, right? If you get into
Well,
like
yeah.
Avatar, the movie, they took it to another level, but it was based off actually that trees do communicate. Trees actually sing. There's a
I think
device
maybe
that
I
you can
saw that.
get. There's
That's
a device you can
right.
get. It used to be called a MIDI sprout. I don't know what it's called now, but it's changed names.
Yep.
But it's a little electrode that you can put on a plant, like on a leaf, and it will you can hear the plant's voice. They actually emit a frequency, again, that's below our hearing in the electromagnetic spectrum. So the transducer that you put on a leaf or on the bark or wherever, it takes that and converts it into something that's auditorily perceivable by our ears.
Yeah.
And so they actually do have a voice. They communicate with volume, and they communicate through the earth, through their root systems and all that kind of stuff.
Which, and then it makes sense. It's like we were talking about when I made the comment on the beach yesterday, and then we watched the little sandpiper go whipping down the beach as this guy threw his frisbee to the dog. And I just thought it was so fascinating that before the frisbee even left his hand, the sandpiper wasn't like doing as normal as he's darting around looking for something. It was like a feeling of get away because something's coming as the dog was coming down the beach, but a very good distance from it. So it's like there's just that. I mean, you can almost, I guess that might be a whole other podcast. So getting into that kind of telepathic and sensing things around you. But there's I've seen things. I'm not the researcher like you, so me reading something is like whoa. But it was interesting about the trees to me, about how they communicate, and they have their way of communicating and stuff. And if it is that we can't hear it and perceive it, whatever, but it's interesting.
Well, I mean, Lord of the Rings, the trees can walk around and hang out with us, right?
That's what I first thought of, actually, was the Lord of the Rings.
I think they're
after.
called the Ents or something like that.
But
They
they're
got their
not
own little
nice in that
society when
movie.
we go to sleep.
Well, not all of them, I guess. Some of
Trees
them
are
were
nice.
kind
They're
of.
just pissed because we're jerks and chopping them down.
Yeah.
And deforestation is real, especially when they're alive.
Yeah, true. They're screaming at us to not do that. So go hug a
So
tree.
yeah, I think anything alive communicates, right? That's the one thing that they may not have consciousness to a level that we have consciousness. And that's what separates us from the animals, is that we have consciousness to a level that we understand we exist. And most animals don't have that consciousness when they're or understand that they exist on that level. So, but they do still communicate. There's still a network. If you look at the trees, if you look at all of these other things, plants know when other plants have been wronged, right? They did research on that. And, if a plant was treated poorly or whatever by a person and then left in a room with another plant, that other plant had a reaction, electromagnetic reaction, when that person walked in the room. And it wasn't the person that treated that plant poorly, like shook it or dropped it on the ground, right? And then that other plant that never had that experience with that person had the same change in electromagnetic frequency. And they've done that multiple times.
Huh.
That's why I'm surprised you hadn't seen that one.
No,
That's why
I
they
haven't.
tell you like to sing to your plants or play music,
Yeah.
because there is a transfer of energy there, and
Huh.
and they do communicate. They talk to each other. Again, it's not perceivable by us, and they don't necessarily have, like I said, a consciousness. Like they understand they exist. I'm not putting that on them, but they do communicate like danger signals. Like, hey, this might not be a good person. He may pick you up and throw you on the ground. So they respond in the same way.
Well,
And
it's all frequency, right? Like
yeah,
you feel anger on somebody or you feel anxious around somebody, then your kid might feel that on somebody, and you're training them, essentially without ever speaking a word.
right. Well, and yeah, you can go down a whole other rabbit hole with that. The 4 generations um, will carry that hurt with them or carry that alarm signal. So they literally pass that genetic code on.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's some science there that maybe trees do as well. So we know they communicate. Everything's about survival. And then so everything develops its own way of communicating for survival.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether it's sounds that are maybe not on the electromagnetic spectrum, I mean, think about that. That's not so weird. We have dog whistles that, it drives your dog nuts, but you can't hear
anything
because they hear at a different frequency level than us. They see at a different frequency level than us too.
Mm-hmm.
They see colors that we don't perceive, and they see mostly black and white on the things that we do perceive. So color isn't always a fixed thing, right? So all of those frequencies, whether it's, that's when it comes down to like, and this, to carry it into treatment a little bit and to carry it into why nature is good. It comes down to why, everybody should get treated a little bit differently, because their brain and their nervous system is a little bit different.
Of course.
The same thing doesn't work for everybody, because the frequency or the amplitude or the depth of whatever I did to person A might completely mesh with person B, and it might not. We
Mhm.
might have to do a completely different set of frequencies and amplitudes and treatments with them because of the way that it meshes with their nervous system. So, but one thing that is fairly universal is those lower frequencies, being in nature, having that experience. But even that, right? It's not the same for everybody. We always joke, some people are beach people, some people are mountain people.
Very true.
And sometimes you need a little bit of both, but there's people that gravitate to Tennessee because that's what calms their nervous system, being in the woods, being around all that. And then there's people like us that gravitate to the beach because the lapping waves and those types of things are what calm our system. So don't get me wrong, I need to disappear to the mountains every once in a while. But both of those things can be healing and can be beneficial for your nervous system. And it depends on where your system's at.
Mhm. Yeah. So I know something that you had introduced me to when I was still a student and trying to kind of calm myself
Those
down.
were fun times, by the
No,
way.
they were not fun times. I hope you've heard the sarcasm there.
Megan,
Um,
her test anxiety it's a real thing, by the way.
Very real.
And
But
you always lash out at those you love. So I guess she loved me a lot when she
I
went through
cried a
school.
lot. I don't call that lashing out. Thank God for NET because that helped by the time we got to part four boards. I was much more tolerable to be around. I don't say so myself. So you taught me something I thought was very because my campus was beautiful. So we would go for walks and enjoy the babbling brook that was in the back in the behind the school, and then it was just all trees and it was just beautiful. It was a really great way to just kind of disconnect, clear your mind. And I remember you telling me, I don't remember all of your specific details, but I thought this would be something good to share with everybody, about how you'll have people kind of following the lines that the leaves and things like that. Because one of the things that I noticed when you told me about that, sunflowers always used to be so fascinating to me as a kid. And I was almost like I could get into a trance just following the
Seed
seeds
line.
and just looking at them as they go along. One of my favorite crystals, the ammonite shell. I love just following and seeing all the details of all the things that were, a part of that, which fits right in with the Fibonacci spiral. But I loved what you said about the leaves and the trees. And I just think that'd be a great takeaway for people, that to get outside, disconnect from your phone, set that down, leave it alone. So you're not hearing the dings and the high pitch and whatnot, and go out and connect with some trees, some bushes, whatever. And then what is it that you usually,
I would have patients while they were walking is you start at the base of the tree, right? The trunk of the tree, and follow a branch, and then follow one of the breaks in the branch, and then follow a break off that, and a break off that, and a break off that. And so you're trying to start at the trunk of the tree and follow a line all the way until it gets out to the very end of one of the branches. And what that does, what shuts our brain down and makes it dull or dumb, so to speak, in being in these 3D or these 3D boxes, is we don't do good with right angles and we don't do good with straight lines. Nothing in nature is a completely straight line or a completely right angle unless we had something to do with it. But when you get in looking at trees, if you think about how it branches off and all of the veins, it's the same thing. Like if you're flying over, low enough to see like a marshy area here, you can see the rivers and the tributaries and all the branches. Or when you look at a picture of the lungs, all the bronchioles or your arteries, they all have that same look to them. And so it's very pleasing on the eyes, but it's also very energizing for areas like the brainstem, is to follow that branch all the way out. And it's not going to be a straight line. It's going to be that jagged kind of moving type of perception that you're looking at. And it's a great eye exercise to do versus, just looking at a target and turning your head side to side, or, pencil push-ups are another, they're really good exercise, but it's different than being in nature and tracing that out. And the same thing can be said if you look at a leaf, you see the veins on a leaf. If you just take a leaf and look at that, follow it all the way up, and then follow each one of the branches and follow it again, follow it again. It's a great way to improve vision. but also just to exercise your brain while you're in nature, and to connect to nature on a different way. Also, if you got to stop long enough to look at the trunk, follow it all the way out, you're probably not thinking about your problems or your worries or any of
Mhm.
that, because the amount of focus and attention it takes to do that activity or to do that exercise is great for kids to do in nature too, especially working on the ADHD type symptoms. And yes, I did air quotes on ADHD, but that's a
That's another podcast.
whole other topic that we could go off on for a while. But yeah, just, I mean, I think urging people to get into nature, but when you get into nature, do it with intention. Don't go in nature and check your phone. Maybe leave your phone in the car, or take it with you in case you get lost, but
Turn
bury
it
it in
on
a
silent.
pocket, turn it off, whatever you got to do. Um, to just engage with nature. It's one step to just get into nature and go for a walk. It's another step to get into nature and engage with nature and actually experience it and be a part of it. So get out into nature. That's your homework. Turn this podcast off and then go sit by the ocean, or
Listen
go
to the
find a park
waves.
near you, Huguenot Park or something like that. Go for a walk and connect to the trees around you.
Thanks for joining us.